Our next speaker ran 3.5% of the internet. Today, he, as Chief Experience Officer at Blackwall, he connects Blackwall security message and solutions with partners, customers, investors, as well as the greater security open source and online industries. With 20 years of experience and 2 successful acquisitions, he focuses on strategy and marketing. Working at Cloudways, he was instrumental in the $350 million acquisition by DigitalOcean. He's an international and respected speaker and has served in multiple industry and open source roles. Please welcome our next speaker, Robert Jacobi.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Is this loud enough for everyone? All the way back there? Good, I got thumbs up. I'm impressed by how awake everyone is after lunch. That doesn't normally happen in the States. Thank you very much for the introduction, and it's great to be here at WP Suomi. First time in Finland, so I'm very, very excited. I'm just going to need to adjust the glasses just right so I can see the monitor. There we go. How many people here saw Lisa Marie's lightning session about an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago? Okay. So now you're all properly terrified of what's going to happen to you on the web. And so I hope everyone here takes security as seriously, especially as the Finns do karaoke. So I've heard it's a kind of a thing. So today we're going to speak about the 7 security layers. OSI is a open solutions interconnection model for what sort of happens when you interact with the web, from the application layer all the way down to the bits and bytes at the hardware layer. Start with a couple of things, and this does tie into WordPress, so don't worry about that part. There we go. Is WordPress secure? So PatchStack released earlier this year. How many people know PatchStack? We can do raise. Okay, so that's some of you. Primarily focused on working with security providers, hosting companies, domain registries, registrars, but especially in the WordPress space. So they had a fascinating report about sort of the types of security things we should worry about in WordPress. 96% of the vulnerabilities that they detected were found in plugins. Oh yeah, everyone's going to want to take screenshots. So that is a very strong indicator of WordPress is kind of secure as code in and of itself. You can see in the chart, really core WordPress is a fraction of what all the vulnerabilities are. And this chart also sort of tries to define, going left to right, the types of vulnerabilities that are exploited. So 30% of the vulnerabilities found are actually utilized and are allowing people to get into your WordPress and your website. So when you look at plugins being the cause of that, that is a very serious situation. And then we have a number of most common vulnerabilities that they found. So cross-site scripting, very common, still a problem, decades into the mix. Access control, okay, how many people are using your default admin username? I mean, just don't do that. There's a number of things you can do around that, but basic line, get rid of the WP admin default admin username, put something new in, passwords, all that fun stuff. SQL injection, sensitive data, and arbitrary file uploads. So misconfigured servers where you can upload a PHP file, then execute it remotely, and then you're stuck. The most popular plugins have fewer vulnerabilities, that they are tested, they're popular, they're secure. But when something breaks in them, if something breaks in Elementor or breaks in, name your favorite WordPress plugin that everyone is using, those vulnerabilities obviously affect a significant portion of the internet, given that WordPress runs 42% of the internet, plus or minus. So you can see sort of along the line of, who has the most popular plugins and what those vulnerabilities are and how high of the threat they are. And then we actually have a list of some of them. So light speed and caching seems to be a really, really, really big problem, since they nail sort of the top 6, 7 of those in the top 10. Events calendar, really simple SSL. So very simple, very dangerous. So these are, again, numbers from PatchStack. They compile reports annually on the state of WordPress security and these kinds of things. So is WordPress a problem? Not really. So we're seeing that it's the ecosystem around that can create the problems and or solve those problems. So core WordPress is a strong product, and it's good that we're utilizing it. And now we get to one of Lisa Maria's topics, bots everywhere. This is the threat vector that is most common against all websites out there. 50% of all internet traffic is bots, and that's increasing rapidly, especially with AI now being a type of bot that's crawling and searching through websites. Of those 50% of bots, 66% of them, so if we start doing the math, we're looking at already 30% of the internet has dangerous, malicious bots out there trying to get some kind of access, looking for the lowest hanging fruit on any website or any hosting provider. And then the amount of traffic that targets the SMBs. So going after the smaller companies is a lot easier, less likely to be thinking about security, less likely to understand all the pieces and parts that go into security. So, and probably typically a lot of solopreneurs, WordPress entrepreneurs, they're SMBs, small and medium businesses. Bots bad. So here we get to the actual topics. I just want to kind of frame the situation, what we have. So the OSI model has been around for over 40 years. So it actually started in the early 1980s, as a telecommunications standard. So phone systems and telecom equipment could work together, and it's been sort of translated and parsed up into what we have today on the internet. There are 7 layers of this wonderful stack. And some of these will make sense pretty quickly to folks. Some will get really technical and geeky. I'm not going to get super technical and geeky because that's just going to be boring, and everyone just had their lunch. They might be resting a little bit. But these are sort of the 7 critical components that are recognized as part of this 40-year-old, and it is an ISO standard as well for where things are on the internet or where things are in a network in general. We're actually going to start out with the most important one, so we can all stay awake. And that's the one that WordPress touches on the most, and that's the application layer. So quite simply, this is where really the user interacts with the internet as a whole. So a user can be a human, it can be a browser, it can be some kind of bot API set of things that are going on. And this is where we can really focus on in the case of WordPress, because this is where all the interactions happen. Interesting parts of the application layer also include web application firewalls, DNS security solutions, things like Cloudflare, CDNs, and other edge networks that are sort of at that just application layer. So really just anything you're touching first and foremost. The second one is the presentation layer. So that works sort of hand in hand with the application layer to do the encryption, compression, some of the things we take sort of almost for granted for. So when you're having images that are automatically zipped up, compressed, that's happening sort of just below what the user is actually seeing directly. A lot of these parts you can sort of take the top 3 layers. So we'll get to the session layer next. But the application, presentation, and session layers work very much hand in hand, and sometimes pieces and parts can be conflated. But pretty standard, straightforward layer. So session communication, how do I know who you are? How do I get the data back to you? Maintaining a session just like you would think of in any web-based application. This geeky layer is the transport layer. So this is where TCP and UDP live. In this layer, you're having a lot of network connections back and forth. It's also where DNS gets managed. So DNS at the web application firewall level sits at the top. There's also DNS protocols happening right there at level 4 as well. Is everyone very excited by this? But it's important to know, because we'll go back through these and see what kind of security solutions and what you can learn and manage around them. Networking layers. So this is where we really start getting away from WordPress in any kind of way, shape, or form. So networking in this regard is we're actually getting into the hardware and how hardware starts talking with itself within a local network or across the internet in general. Data link layer. This is even more network geeky. So in networking, you have frames and relays and all these kinds of parts to make sure that communication is processed correctly. So you can see how some of these sort of flow over back and forth from each other. It's not the most perfect model. It's just the standardized model by the Open Solutions Interconnection group. And last but not least, yes, the ones and zeros that actually go on all the way at the bottom of the stack. So this is really direct hardware to hardware, bits and bytes communication, and how everything gets handled on the internet. I'm going to actually roll back. So now that we have sort of a brief understanding of this, let's have some little audience participation. Do you know how your hosting company secures your WordPress website? Yes, you don't know? How many of you are actively involved in looking at that, or do you just blindly trust your the hosting company people here get it? So typically you're going to go to a hosting company, you're going to spin up your website. It might be a managed service, it may be a shared service, and you're just going to hope it runs. WordPress has a number of plugins that also could be bolted on for security. So you think of things like WordFence. So I'm just going to throw on WordFence because it's going to make my site secure. One of the critical components at the application layer is it's sitting on a server somewhere. And you can have different levels of servers throughout the process. And of course, you absolutely do, because you have a DNS server, you have the web server, you might have a database server, CDN, however that's all spread out. The key, especially if you're using shared hosting, is understanding the resource utilization that you're going to have. So setting up a shared server, a VPS, putting WordPress on there, and then bolting on solutions that sit on your site actually starts slowing things down, especially with certain types of attacks. So what's the best way to resolve that solution? And you're going to wind up paying for it. If you're paying for bandwidth or whatnot, you could get absolutely hammered. So one of the things at the application layer that I feel is very important for people to be aware of is some type of web application firewall, some kind of some kind of security at the DNS level, so that when those requests come in, they can be parsed before they actually hit your web infrastructure. Because once they're there, they're already able to start doing malicious attacks and things. We look at all the bot attacks that are going on and how much traffic there is. You want to mitigate those folks from getting near to your sort of, if you think of it as an onion, to the core of the onion. Keep multiple layers of security going as much as you can. So if you have WordFence, that's great, but now there are already a couple layers into your web application, your WordPress site. Focus on working with your hosting company, understanding web application firewalls and where they can be utilized best. And also pushing out, not in a headless way, but pushing as much out to the edge, as we'll call it. So using tools like Cloudflare are great, just to, again, get that load off of your actual server. You'll have better performance, you'll have better security. It's sort of just the nature of the beast. Keep pushing those out. And if you're the site that has multiple layers of security in, those bots will just keep wandering and finding the next, someone who's weaker than your site. Does that make sense? Or no? Come on, it's so quiet. I'm not used to like an auditorium setting. So those are the critical aspects, of the application layer. If someone gets in, then they're sort of still on that application and presentation layer, And that's when you start worrying about malware. And there are hosting providers that provide automated malware solutions, not just like SiteLock or Security, but there are even solutions like Monarchs, which monitor PHP directly. So if there's any PHP that's injected or the WP admin PHP file is corrupted, those things can be detected. So now you're looking at, again, another level of security. So those are the places that I think are very critical for everyone to be focused on and understand. And I'm hoping there are questions around a lot of that, because there are different ways of handling it depending on what your infrastructure looks like and what your site is. If it's a shared hosting provider with WordPress, you're really going to want to look at the level of firewall security you have, versus if it's a very distributed cloud service, you might have different concerns around what the security should look like across the network, even because if you're deploying globally, you're going to have to worry about if one site gets hit, another one might also get killed. When we get down to session layer, now this is more of the hardware aspects of that. Then that's more out of our control unless you're building up your own environment. So if you're doing something with Kubernetes or VPS, you're really going to have almost zero control over that. So that's where picking a particular hosting provider becomes very important, to know what they're doing with that kind of infrastructure. And the rest, you're never even going to see this unless you're building out your own data center. This is way beyond anything that's going to touch WordPress. How many people actually want or have their own data center? Yeah, exactly. That's not WordPress. We can't get into that. So again, just sort of a quick top-line review of the main 7 layers: application layer, presentation layer, session, transport, and so on. Okay, but one more thing. Because of AI, there's now an actual push to look at even a higher level of the model, and almost an 8th layer, as people are talking about it. So this would be sort of the semantic model, and how do we communicate with AI agents, with the AI platforms, and that also becomes a security, because I don't know if you've heard of prompt injections. Anyone, Bueller? That's it. So prompt injections are pretty much tricking AI agents to do weird things. So, for example, using AI to drop in weird queries into your calendars and events, and all of a sudden something might be broken in that system, and then that allows it to go deeper into your infrastructure. So that's sort of this new layer that people are talking about, a semantic AI 8th layer. Oops. I'm going to save that for the end. I'm going to leave that up because there's a couple of other things that are also critical, and also in the title of the conversation. So with the OSI model in place, what does that mean for other things? So Europe has recently enacted the European Resiliency Act. How many people have heard of that? Ooh. Okay, something to know about. The European Resiliency Act, in short form, states that you need to be able to understand every piece of software within your infrastructure, because if something goes wrong, it is your fault, and if you can't keep track of that and know what's going on, you'll be liable. So it's very critical, and they're actually, Automatic and WordPress specifically submitted a lot of suggestions and points to the initial draft of the model, because open source is very complicated. Think of all the different open source pieces and puzzles that go into running a WordPress site. You're going to have the actual WordPress application, great, which runs on PHP, which has React, which has MySQL. So right there you have 4 major things. We're not even talking to the subsequent libraries that are also bundled and included with that kind of stuff. So what's been discussed over the last year, sort of in security spaces, is what we call a software bill of sale, bill of materials, excuse me. So a bill of materials is typically when you're doing any kind of like regular, transportation, is like you get a list. This is everything that's in your freight truck. perfect. You can check it. That's the bill of materials, everything that's gone into making that chair. You'll have all the descriptions of the screws and the types of wood, blah, 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 blah. So now there is a push to also qualify that for software solutions. So again, a software bill of materials. One of the interesting things that I'm sure some of you may have heard about the WP drama last year that occurred with Automatic and WP Engine. But one of the interesting things that came out of that, because of the many things that happened during that time, is that the FAIR project was created. I don't know if people know what the So the FAIR project tries to take the repo as we know it at WordPress and actually create a distributed form of that. I'm selling it shortly, and you can always bother Milana about it. She might know a few things about the FAIR project. And there are a number of hosting providers that are participating in that, funding that, and that allows for a couple of interesting things. One, you're going to have to correct me on some of this, but we can now actually have, we're not worried about the slugs for plugins. And then there's also the hash, so you can authenticate the plugins. So there's a couple of features that really just don't exist at the WP org repo that exists in the FAIR project. And it's also distributed, so it allows, there's no single point of failure then. So you can split up the repository talks to itself and others. You can point your WordPress site to a specific FAIR repo, but those repos can also talk to each other. So it's actually taking the repo as we know it and making it more distributed. On the plus side, because of the hashing and additional security features in the FAIR project repositories, that also allows for having that sort of software bill of materials, because now you're able to authenticate what package came from where and have that as documentation and backup, especially regarding the European Resiliency Act. So that's a critical aspect of what's going on with the plugins, as we see that plugins cause so many other problems. And it's relevant to the stack because it sits at the application layer, and it's WordPress, and it's FAIR. And you can actually download the FAIR plugin from GitHub and try it out as a repo already. I don't know how many plugins are actually on there yet. A lot, let's just say. And I would highly recommend it. Do you have the URL to that, or just go to GitHub and search for FAIR? Just go to GitHub. Yell on GitHub. Covered software materials, quality repealing. Yep. Yeah, so that's, I was hoping to open up for fairly many questions, because this is a very broad overview, and I don't know exactly where everyone's at with understanding the technology that goes into the stack. So please start shooting away. And I think we have to use do you have a list?
We don't yet have a list. I kind of forgot to mention it, we had the lightning talks, and this was not enabled, and now you may ask questions. So let's give some few minutes time, and maybe you could.
That's even shorter than I thought.
Yeah,
I talked way too quickly.
Yeah, but it was to the point. I was looking at your intro text, and said you ran 3.5% of the internet, and I was like, how? Explain. Can you elaborate?
So that actually comes from another open source project. I was the president of Joomla for a bit. So if you know the Joomla project, at the time it was 3.5% of the internet. So that's sort of that pitch on running that.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I had a Joomla project myself. Yeah, once.
And you don't anymore.
I don't anymore. I don't know why. I have a feeling it's coming back. What do you think? Bad crowd for that.
Yeah.
No, right.
But that's an interesting question. A show of hands. How many people only use WordPress as a development platform?
Okay, not so many.
Yeah, not so many.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's interesting about the stack, obviously, and discussing web application firewalls and solutions like that, is those apply at the DNS level, and that's going to protect you regardless of whether you're using Laravel, Drupal, Joomla, any other kind of application, and also at the API level. Oh, another really important note. turn off the remote API access to your WordPress website unless you need it for something. It's on by default, and it's a giant security hole because people can automatically scrape all your user content and any other content via the API rather than actually using a bot to scrape web pages the old-fashioned way. So that's another critical and easy to solve security hole. Not a hole, but it should be turned off by default.
Yeah, good tip. Here, we got a first question from the audience. What, in your opinion, is the most critical security layer?
It's 7, because that's the layer at which people are interacting with your website, which is the biggest surface threat area for all the bots that are attacking, because that is the biggest threat that we have now. The bots are smarter, they're easier to program. They're not always great, so that's why if having just a few bits of security in the mix will hopefully turn those bots to another website that's not secure. If you're on a shared hosting environment, that's not the best answer because your neighbor might also be weak, and that'll also infect then your actual application.
Yeah.
But yeah, 7 is where we live here in WordPress, and that's really 90% of what's solvable, and solvable relatively easily. So with malware prevention, with solutions like WordFence, and of course you really want to focus at that top level, whatever edge-based solutions are available to you.
Gotcha. We also have what's the number one thing to keep WordPress secure?
Well, turn off that API access for one. I mean, that's a really easy one, and it's amazing how much content and information that you don't want out there can be easily scraped. Not going to get passwords necessarily, but once you start getting usernames, now you can match them up with known databases and take advantage of leaks and holes there. Credentials and users are always going to be sort of the worst offender. Security always starts with humans, and if we're bad and lazy about managing credentials, that just makes life easier for any malicious actor.
All right, and we got a few questions about the WAF. So that would be the web application firewall. So how would you compare the web application firewall providers? Many CDN providers have WAF, but I guess they're not equally good.
And they aren't. Obviously, Blackwall support has a WAF solution, but some are really good. Some are not. One of the keys to a good WAF is how often they're updated and how global their presence is, because what you want to take advantage of in a good WAF is that if they find a vulnerability in Australia, that can be immediately deployed across the global network and directly impact and benefit your website when something small happens somewhere else. So some providers have better reach, some providers update more often, and I'm not just going to pick on anyone, but I mean, some are better than others, and it's kind of obvious. So if we look at GoDaddy, for example, that's a pretty secure company. They have security. That's a good WAF solution. It provides other benefits around that with what they have on malware as well. There is also, oh my goodness, something 360. I can't remember what it's called. That's another great solution. So I'll leave it at that, and then you can think that the other ones aren't.
All right. Is AI prompting so bad? What is the worst thing you've seen happen with AI prompting attack? Can't be that bad.
I mean, so AI prompting is interesting because it's typically more likely to affect you directly. When you install a solution with AI that has access to your calendars or your emails or something, you're like, oh, this will be great. AI will just go through my emails. It'll come back in the morning and it'll tell me, oh, you forgot to buy coffee yesterday because we saw in your Amazon shopping cart that you didn't buy coffee like you were supposed to, things like that. When a good prompt comes in and tricks it into saying, well, while we're looking at coffee, can you also tell me, the last 30 people that I wrote an email to and see if there's any passwords in those emails. So that's where prompt injection attacks really can cause trouble. But as we look at what's going to happen with AI and sort of the agentic services, the automated AI services that are going to be crawling around websites, now they'll be able to do the same thing. So I'm going to ask such and such website for my WooCommerce shopping cart that I abandoned for Pokemon T-shirts. Well, now if there's a good prompt attack on that, you can break into that site if you have the right query that sort of confuses it. Because part of it is, how strong is your application and resilient to being confused by malicious prompts.
Right.
And DNS providers, so the web application firewall providers, are looking at. So fundamentally, how a web application firewall works is it looks at all your traffic. So it knows what's going on all the time. As we've said for decades, if you're going to put it on the internet, someone's going to have access to it at some point. So the good web application firewalls are looking at requests that have bad prompts in them to prevent that going forward. So that's one of the tricks around that.
Sure. Well, we're in a WordPress event, so obviously we're going to talk about plugins. Many security plugins are themselves huge security risks, apparently. Are there any you would recommend?
I personally do not use any WordPress security plugins. One being potential resource overutilization if they can't handle the attack correctly, and then you're already screwed. Pardon my English at that level. And because they have root access to your website for a lot of mitigation and maybe automated malware fixing, again, that gives them too much authority to do whatever they want on your website. So even though it's a plugin, that's a security plugin, doesn't mean it doesn't have the same plugin issues that anything else might have for secure SQL injection attacks, cross-site scripting, and whatnot. Plugins are the bane of any WordPress website. Update early, update often, and review. So again, if you go to the Patch Stack site, they actually list a lot of what's going on. And WordFence is great for knowing the vulnerabilities, but having that as I just don't like it. I'd rather push as much of the security protection outside, and then once they're in, make sure I have the backups and I'm ready to roll with those. And okay, so everyone here, of course, backs up their website. When was the last time you tested a backup? So we're going to go easy. Have you tested any of your backups in the last year? Well, Milana, you're going to say...
Sit down.
Okay, so we only have a tiny little handful of people in the last year. Of that tiny, tiny group, how many have tested a backup in the last month? Okay, and plus Milana, that makes 4. So of this entire audience, only 4 people have tested a backup in the last month. This is critical because security things happen, websites go down, whatnot. Having a backup remotely stored as well. You're going to have backups on your local hosting provider because a lot of times that's just automated. But actually going through the process of rebuilding that site from a backup should be done once a month. You can even script it and automate it so you know what's going on. But, understand how long it'll take to get that website up and what things might be missing. Because then you can compare your tested backup versus live site and see, oh, I lost this many orders or I lost this much content. Do I need to worry about this more? Am I doing enough backups? Do I need to do backups, hourly, daily, weekly? For some of you, weekly, monthly backups is probably fine, depending on the content, but especially if you're running an e-commerce practice, that content is going to change all the time, and how quickly can you restore and how much will you lose? And knowing that allows you also to sort of set expectations for your customers and clients on what could happen in a worst case scenario, which hopefully they'll never have to use, but it makes you seem a lot smarter that you care about their products and solutions.
Cool. A couple of more. Any tips for agencies working with a spectrum of different kind of clients and hosting companies? Some common tools or software you'd recommend?
I like consolidating a lot on the hosting side. It just makes it easier. It gives you more sort of authority with your hosting company. Instead of saying I only have 2 sites on here, I have 40 sites. Honestly, your hosting company will listen to you more if you have 40 sites than that you only have 2 sites. It's just sort of the nature of the beast, and you're more likely to have a dedicated manager or dedicated support of some level than you would if you're just piecemeal. If you have, even if you have to deal with multiple hosting vendors, one of the tricks, and we just talked about this with backups, test those backups against on another hosting provider. So if you're on, let's just pick on them. So if you're on WordPress.com and that's your primary site, well, maybe you might have a staging site on WP Engine. You can test that on WP Engine. Well, but I mean, look what happened last year when WP Engine was locked out of the repository. So that's a totally unexpected situation, and having backups, understanding, sort of again from that software bill of materials space, where everything is and what you need and how to get it is critical. And like getting ACF changed as a slug, that was also another problem. Some people, I won't necessarily call it this, but some folks have definitely called it a man-in-the-middle attack, because you had a plugin and all of a sudden it was renamed without your consent, and it was kind of an attack on that actual application. And what else could have happened? And you don't know. So test early, test often. Any kind of scripting that you can do to maintain across multiple hosting providers will make your life easier. You definitely don't want to be doing this by hand, because when situations arise, you're not going to have time.
Good. One final question for you, Robert, then I'll let you go. So where would I go to find out more about prompt vulnerabilities? Anything recommended source?
Well, just go to ChatGPT.
Well, there you go. That was short and concise.
Google is great for it. Just searching on it. GitHub actually has a number of repositories on prompts and different types of prompt attacks. It's actually kind of fascinating what people have tried, and you can see how they've been fixed in the interim when folks have done that. So it's like, okay, these are the prompt attacks we've used, or the prompts that we see have caused issues and failures and things. So that's actually a fun place to check. If you're into that, fun place to crawl around and check to see what folks are doing.
All right. Thank you very much. And you'll be here around if people want to.
I will be here for another hour.
Another hour. Okay. You have 1 hour. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Jacobi, thank you very much.